Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Today I'm going to talk about a book I reread yesterday. It took about 5 hours, I think. As I said, I've read it before, so it was easier to read through quickly the second time. And it's for my writing purposes, that's why I reread it. But also it's a superb book, so why wouldn't you reread it? The book is 1984. It was written in 1949, and of course Orwell's other most famous book is Animal Farm, and that was written about in 44, I think, but censors wouldn't allow it to be published until 45, till the war was over, because it was critical of Stalin. And that was a memory, something that would last in Orwell's memory, this act of censorship. So 1984, amazing book. Again, I reread it for my own research purposes, and it is very much centered on what it is I'm writing about in this book of mine that I'm composing right now. And I hope will be finished by the summer. That's my goal. Write a book a year, which means I have to finish them by the summer, like last book. Okay, so 1984, we all have heard about it. We've all heard of things like Big Brother, INSOC, and the million other interesting phrases and all that stuff. This has been a profoundly impactful work on the West. It's hard to go a week without hearing on the news something about Big Brother or Orwellian or something like that. And one of the cruel ironies of life is that people are now using 1984 as just a part of the whole misinformation thing that Orwell was talking about in the first place. Is he talking about leftism? Is he talking about rightism? You know, is he targeting Nazism, or is he targeting Stalinism? The fact is, he's targeting totalitarianism, and there can be left-wing and right-wing totalitarianism. Actually, some people would say there can't be right-wing totalitarianism. It depends what you mean by right-wing. I suppose right now means liberalism, and you can't have totalitarian liberalism. It's not possible. Anyway, regardless of that, I wasn't really sure what I was going to talk to you about with the book this time, but I thought, well, it's just such an amazing work that I wanted to talk to you about it and tell you to stop putting it off, but read it. Okay, it's wonderful as a narrative. It's a wonderful story. Now, when I say wonderful, it's not wonderful like The Sound of Music is wonderful or whatever. It's impressive. It's depressing and impressive. It is in some ways terrifying, but it's also extremely captivating, provocative, thoughtful. Now, let me set a bit of a context for the book. If you want to have an insight or the TLDR on 1984, why don't you read Orwell's essay, which he wrote in 1946, called Politics and the English Language. This little essay, and it's only, I don't know, 5 pages. It's not, it's less than an hour's read, half an hour's read or whatever. And it's very important. This this essay was assigned to me, I remember, in my first year of university in a intro to poli-sci course I took, and it always stuck with me. And I remember it as sort of an interesting comment on literature and writing, but also on politics. So obviously you have both aspects in the title. And basically the central theme of the essay is the central theme of 1984, and that is how ideas and words, especially words, we're focused on words here, words can be used to manipulate. Okay, so words are good things. We think of literacy as a good thing, reading as a good thing, but the modern age, with totalitarianism, with insights into psychology, human psychology, we've discovered that words can be quite manipulative too, and detrimental to human thriving. So basically that's what Orwell's arguing, both in the essay and in the full-length 1984, is the way the impoverishment of words leads to the impoverishment of the mind, leads to the impoverishment of politics. So that's basically what you have. You have a people who are enslaved by words, and people who are kept anesthetized, as Orwell would say, by sloppy thinking and imprecise and misleading words. So one of the things, one of the other phrases you get from the book is something like, he who controls the past controls the future. And so the main character, Winston, his job was working in one of the departments, and his role was basically finding things in newspaper articles that were no longer politically correct. So if somebody was praised, say, in a December 1983 article, and the person became vaporized afterwards, by January 1984, you have to remove his name from the record. He never existed, okay? And when you think about it, is it possible? Sure, it's possible. Think about the efforts of the Democrat Party in the US to create a mythos of January 6th, as they call it. It was a riot or demonstration or something in which there were no guns, but which they want to keep saying, worse than 9/11, attack on our democracy, worse than 9/11, attack on our democracy, deadly protest. So, and then just this year, a year after, so the first anniversary, they hark back onto it again. Worst attack on our democracy. So this was from the very party who is encouraging the Black Lives Matter rioters and saying that America is a racist hellhole when it benefited them. When it doesn't benefit them, they talk about attack on our democracy, our precious democracy, which was a year earlier a racist hellhole. Racist hellhole, attack on our precious democracy. So you see how it works. So this is the exact thing that Orwell was talking about, and he knew it firsthand. So he was like many, sorry, focus is out there on the camera. He was like many intellectuals in the early 1900s. I can think of others like Bertrand Russell, the great philosopher, who tended to support international socialism, the workers' movements and all that stuff, and yet be totally snowed, totally bought into Stalin's propaganda. And Orwell talks about this as well. He says basically you put it in different words. You don't talk about death camps and purges. You say a period of transition, a difficult moment in history, right? So those are some of the examples that he would use about how language is manipulative, politically manipulative. So Orwell, who was always sort of interested in the plight of lower class people, blah, blah, blah. He grew up in the British colonies way out east, like India-ish. And so he was always much in contact with lower class people and so on. And his first writings were about dock workers and stuff in England. So when the Spanish Civil War broke out, which was basically a clear, it was a fight. It was really complicated, regional, cultural, all that stuff. But one of the main divisions was a class division and a left-right division. So you had the fascists under Franco being supported by Hitler and whatever. And on the other hand, you had the leftists, socialists, being supported by people like Stalin. Okay, so Orwell being the, more inclined the left-leaning person, he decided to go and join the fight on behalf of the left. And it was there that he realized, that he discovered how truth is manipulated. He witnessed the use of show trials, and how the press is an agent of manipulation. So Orwell also became under surveillance from Marxists, because he wasn't a Marxist. He was a sort of a soft-pedaling socialist. So that was his first lesson about how his beloved left, for instance, doesn't have any particular regard for the truth. There's only the party. There's only the cause. Okay, and everything else is secondary. And well-meaning lefties in Britain and the United States bought into this stuff and were very, very slow in learning about what Stalin was up to. We talk about how could the West have let Hitler get up to what he was doing? Well, Hitler didn't broadcast the Holocaust, and Stalin didn't broadcast his purges and his concentration camps. Okay, and when Westerners came to visit Russia, they would always show them the best labor camps and, spice them up, give everybody clean clothes and good water and good food while they're being investigated. So that's the background to 1984. So obviously Orwell was very concerned with the direction he was seeing things going. And the new capacity for electronic surveillance. So let's remember, and a massively increased literate population, the more people can read, the more they can be manipulated by print. And electronic surveillance was brand new at the start of the century, and became very important during World War II. And of course, all the madness of Stalinism in the 30s, 40s, 50s. And obviously, it's a warning to us today. There are so many surveillance cameras out there, and we have things like deep fakes and all that stuff now. We have Canadian government going into people's private bank accounts, people they don't like. Seems illegal to me. Seems illegal, seems unprecedented. And you have a government that can declare martial law whenever it sees fit. These are things that are deeply concerning. And the collusion between government and the Silicon Valley with Google, Facebook, and Twitter, and so on. And it's playing a bit of a role now in the Ukraine war. God bless Ukraine. God curse Stalin. Putin. And so this is why, and I suppose eventually, in 1984, Orwell mentions that they're rewriting Shakespeare and Milton to make them politically correct. Okay, and we've seen that in the past. There was, in England forever, there was the family Shakespeare. Okay, the family Shakespeare, a version of Shakespeare's plays and stuff that were, all the naughty stuff was taken out. And we do that all the time. We're now getting rid of things like To Kill a Mockingbird, stuff like that, things that were formerly liberal, pro-people, anti-racist things, which are no longer politically correct for one reason or another. So, will the same fate befall 1984? Will the same fate befall Animal Farm? It depends. Orwell says that it all depends He says some of it can be cleaned up by brave individuals, and he calls them in the politics in the English language, he calls them rebels. He says sometimes rebels fix the language, dress it up a little bit, or don't dress it up, they push against the manipulation, okay? So they push back against blanket use of the term racism, Nazism, stuff like that, fascism. You can see these words are being used as political cudgels today. So will there be enough people to push against them? And once again, I'll refer to somebody like Jordan Peterson, who pushes against this stuff. And Peterson is really good because he doesn't allow the slips. He doesn't allow, for instance, you to elide over the fact that, for instance, he's only interested in compelled speech. He's not talking about the rights of transgendered people. He's talking about controlled speech, okay? And in his famous talk with the journalist Kathy Newman in Britain, you see him over and over again saying, let's look at my exact words. I didn't say that. These are my exact words, okay? And it's that kind of person. It's just too easy to go with the flow, and that's how these people win, because people are lazy and fearful, and they let things slide. So, with most totalitarianisms, it's gradually increasing, right? It builds and builds and builds, and that's the problem. And so Orwell says it begins with language. Sloppy language, lazy language, imprecise language, and that's the main point of 1984. Is 1984 a valid picture of human life? Looking back on it 70 years later, just over 70 years later, it's quite believable because 1984 is exactly what North Korea looks like. And it's very much what China looks like. It would have been what Russia was, but Russia fell apart because of brave people like Solzhenitsyn and so on. So maybe China will collapse, and if China collapses, it'll collapse from a population bomb, but probably not the surveillance state collapsing in on itself. It's probably going to be a population explosion, in time bomb, basically. So how long can North Korea go on? In 1984, the world is impoverished and yet called, manipulated and told it has plenty and there's hope and good things are always happening. But you look around you and all you have is squalor, poverty, hunger, okay? Will they look around in North Korea and say, it can't get any worse than this, so let's take action? Will the Chinese say, we've had enough, no more? Don't know. Will Canada say, no one's allowed to look in anybody's bank accounts, regardless of the crimes they're accused of? Will you be allowed to say anything on Facebook without getting a visit from the OPP? We'll see. It all depends on what people are willing to permit and to put up with. So Orwell, always of vital and lasting relevance. And again, I read the book in about 5 hours. If you want to take it in well, it's probably going to take you 10 hours or whatever. So anyway, thanks for sharing, or thanks for listening. And I'll try to get back with another video really soon. Until then, thanks everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Bye now.